You know, the story of Robert Pera isn't your typical Silicon Valley tale of hype and celebrity. It's really about a different kind of ambition, an obsessive, almost monastic devotion to just building things. Pera embodies what you might call the builder archetype. He's driven by this core belief that the world is inefficient and that he is the one to engineer a better way. And that brings us to the central question behind his entire empire.
I mean, really think about that. This is the central puzzle of Ubiquiti, the company Pera founded. It's a company that operates on a logic that seems to defy every single rule of modern business. It's a question that forces us to look past all the conventional wisdom and search for a completely different kind of blueprint.
And here's your first clue. $1.73 million. That's Ubiquiti's revenue per employee. It's an absolutely staggering number that signals a level of radical efficiency most hardware companies can only dream of. This isn't just lean, it's practically frictionless.
So, the crucial point here is that to understand this company, you have to get inside the mind that built it. This isn't about one single invention. It's about a fundamental worldview, one that sees engineering, efficiency, and ruthless capital allocation as the ultimate tools for creating value.
Every builder's story has a moment of friction, right? A point where they push against the status quo, and it pushes back. Well, for Pera, that moment came not at his own startup, but inside one of the biggest companies on the planet, Apple.
Pera's entire life seems to have prepared him for this path. A serious illness in high school forced him into a year of intense, solitary focus, a real psychological crucible that shaped his whole temperament. Then he goes on to master both the technical and the global, earning degrees in electrical engineering and Japanese. By the time he joined Apple in 2003, he wasn't just looking for a job, he was looking for a problem to solve.
And he found one, in the most mundane of places, really. His job was to test Wi-Fi device emissions, and he discovered that the hardware was operating nowhere near its legal power limits. His insight was simple but totally profound. If you just cranked up the power, you could transform Wi-Fi from a short-range convenience into a long-range utility, connecting entire communities. But Apple, which was laser-focused on the iPhone at the time, passed on the idea.
And this just perfectly illustrates his mindset. He was frustrated by corporate incrementalism. Perlana didn't just quit, he revolted. So in 2005, with just $30,000 from his savings and credit cards, he left Apple to go build the future himself.
But Pera's innovation wasn't just in the hardware. He knew a better product wasn't enough. He needed to engineer a better business model, one that was almost completely automated. He called it the touchless model. So while competitors like Cisco were spending fortunes on massive sales teams and expensive dinners, Pera viewed that entire apparatus as a tax on the customer, just a layer of friction that masked technical inferiority. His bet was that if the product was good enough and priced right, it would sell itself through a global community of evangelists.
Now, what's really fascinating is how that philosophy translates into pure math. Let's look at these hypothetical unit economics. Ubiquiti can sell a product for a third of the price, but because its operating expenses are just a fraction of its competitors, it actually achieves a higher operating margin. And check out that last line, 0 annual maintenance fees. That is a complete disruption of the industry's entire profit model. And does it work at scale? Oh, absolutely. The fiscal year 2025 results are the ultimate proof. We're talking revenue of $2.6 billion and net income that more than doubled to over $700 million. This isn't a fluke, it's the output of a ruthlessly efficient, finely tuned machine.
But a machine that valuable needs protection. So, Pera engineered his competitive moat through 3 distinct layers: a really unique company culture, proprietary technology, and, well, the resilience to survive a catastrophic crisis.
First up, the culture. Pera describes Ubiquiti as a playground for engineers. And you just have to think about that ratio. Over 2/3 of the entire company is in R&D. By establishing talent hubs in places like Latvia and Poland, he built an army of specialists focused purely on the product, totally bypassing the distractions and entitlement of Silicon Valley.
Second, the technology. While his rivals were just using off-the-shelf chips, Pera made a huge bet on developing his own custom silicon. He built an in-house ASIC team, that's application-specific integrated circuits, to create proprietary chips. This created something called the LTU platform, giving him control over the entire vertical stack. This is the deep, technical moat that lets Ubiquiti deliver performance that competitors simply can't match at his price points.
But this high-trust model was almost destroyed from the inside, in a story that honestly reads like a techno-thriller.
A senior engineer stole a ton of confidential data, tried to extort the company, and then posed as a whistleblower, feeding false stories to the press. The damage was immense, a $4 billion drop in market value. But in this wild twist, the attacker was caught when his own internet went out, his VPN failed, and his home IP address was exposed.
Okay, so this brings us to the final, and perhaps most sophisticated layer of Pera's strategy, his complete mastery of financial engineering.
Pera models his financial strategy on Henry Singleton, who was the legendary CEO of Teledyne, and the philosophy is pretty simple. Treat your company's stock like a currency. When the market undervalues your machine, the single best investment you can possibly make is in yourself. You buy back as much of your own stock as you can.
And he has executed this strategy to an absolute extreme. I mean, just look at this. Pera now owns 93% of his own company. He has effectively taken it private while it's still on the public markets, giving him nearly absolute control to execute his long-term vision without any interference.
And the scale of this whole operation is just breathtaking. Between 2016 and 2023, Pera spent $2.8 billion buying back his own stock.
In the result, a fortress balance sheet, as he calls it. By mid-2025, Ubiquiti had zero long-term debt. It's a self-funding growth engine completely insulated from the volatility of credit markets.
He even applied this same logic to professional sports. When he bought the Memphis Grizzlies, a lot of people saw it as just a vanity project. But Pera saw a market inefficiency, a mismatch in the value of NBA media rights. He won a high-stakes buy-sell battle with his partners, and a deal that valued the team at over $1.3 billion proved he wasn't playing games. He was building another asset.
So, when you put it all together, what you're left with is a series of fascinating contradictions, a true paradox in the modern business world.
You've got the man on one side and the machine on the other. The CEO is famously reclusive, yet his company is powered by a massive global community. He sells hardware products, but he somehow achieves software-level margins. It's a public company that operates with the autonomy of a private dictatorship, and it generates billions in revenue with no traditional sales force.
Which leaves us with a final and pretty provocative question. In our modern economy, which is so often driven by personality, by marketing, and just by noise, is it possible that Robert Pera's blueprint is actually the most powerful strategy of all? To simply ignore the hype, focus on the engineering, and build a machine so efficient and so superior that the world has no choice but to take notice.